Hey guys,
Hello.
we are back.
Yay.
Oh, I forgot to ask you guys if my microphone was loud enough, too loud.
Sounds good to
It's
me.
Okay,
great.
I have an actual microphone this week, my Yeti.
Yeah, I got mine too. So,
So it's hard. I tried without it, and yeah,
yeah.
had a lot of sound problems. So
Yeah. Well, thanks
Oh.
you guys for covering all the material last week and in my
Oh, we
absence.
had fun.
Traveling.
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was. Of course, we did miss you. And we
Yes,
missed
Yeah,
Herbert.
terribly.
He's
I
not
missed
here
you guys
either.
too. I was on the road. We went last Friday was my cousin's funeral in Louisiana, and then we were Saturday. Just a lot of all the family was gathered up because we had a lot of people come from out of town.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, my youngest daughter and I were back on the road driving to Texas, and we did not let my oldest daughter know we were even in the area. So we just showed up at her doorstep. She thought she was hallucinating.
Oh my
Because
God.
here is mom and sister from Washington in her doorstep in Texas.
Wow. I bet that was a shock.
Yeah, the look on her face was like, what? And then we walked in, and of course, she's got 3 kids, and so the oldest granddaughter is 16, and the look on her face was really hilarious.
Oh,
Like, oh crap, we didn't have time to cram everything in the closets.
Oh my gosh, that was literally her, like before she even let us in the door, her thing was, I haven't cleaned my house. I'm like,
yeah.
I know you haven't. Trust me. When we show up announced, I know she always tells me she spends like a whole week cleaning her house. So
I'm the same way though. It's like if I know I'm having company, it's like I don't know, I just go into this frenzy. And
Me
it
too.
shouldn't matter. It's not that my house is like totally nasty or anything, but for some weird reason I feel like it has to look perfect if somebody's coming over. So if somebody drops in, I'm just like, is there any cat hair over there? Oh no, the baseboard looks nasty. I just see these things in my head, and I'm sure nobody else pays attention to them, but I do.
You know what's funny is I am the same way, but yet, and I used to have so much shame around the way my house looked, or, it wasn't perfect. It's just a regular old house, and I would just look at all these houses. I guess mostly they were fiction because I was seeing stuff online and, stuff that is what people want you to see of their lives.
like in a
And
magazine.
I just thought everybody else had it together and I was the only one that didn't. But, I've realized lately that, people they live just like we do, there are some people who have true like problems with hoarding and stuff like that. And I'm not going there, but like just regular, average, everyday people, you stop by and they're going to be thinking that. But when I go in other people's houses, I don't even care if if their baseboards had dust on them.
Exactly. I don't think about it. Or if I happen to think about it, it's not in a, does their house look bad? It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, they've got a little bit of cat hair too, so it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? They're just human. They're not perfect.
Yeah, I just don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Like I'm going to come in and be like inspecting their house.
Yeah.
Like I came to see you.
Especially your own mother should not be doing that, right?
Right. At the very least, yeah.
I was just happy to see them all. And, so no, so she did let me in.
Well, that's good.
But anyway, so you two decided that we're going to do 5 chapters today.
Yes, it's because of I flipped through. Well, I say flip through. I flipped through on the app, and then I have two ways, the Audible and then also the Kindle. And it looked like there's 10 chapters left, but it looked like it kind of goes together to like do 5 and 5. If we do 4 and 4, then we're going to have 2 that are really small at the end. And it just looked like time-wise, it would go together. So, and these chapters aren't super long anyway.
No, they're not long at all. And of course, like I told you guys backstage, I kind of went down a couple rabbit holes. So you know, I've got slides and some things that I wanted to talk about and show you guys. And
Cool.
Yeah,
You
that's
always add a lot to the discussion, so I like it when you do that.
yeah.
I have the time, and I'm,
Yeah.
it's my left side of my brain likes to engage.
I love the slides because that is not me. Lynn is the prepared one.
I'm the
I'm
slide
on the
person.
fly. Like I mean, it's good and bad, in both
Wait,
ways
you've
of
got
being.
3 kids at home.
I've got 4 kids.
4? Oh, that's right. You got 4 kids.
One
So,
of them's 21, so he's not so much a
right.
kid, but he's still at home.
And you have
Yeah.
a younger one too. So no, in fact, my youngest, her wedding's in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's
And yeah,
awesome.
I
How
hardly
exciting.
I hardly see her, so I have time.
Well, I like that's your personality too. You
That is
don't just
true.
it's because that's not me at all. Like even if I had no kids here, I'm just like on the fly, and then I used to think it was such a horrible thing, but now I'm like, that's just how I am and it works for certain situations.
Well,
So
and that's why there's more than one person in a book club,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you have different personalities and we all have different thoughts about the material. And, I just happen to go down rabbit holes and, for my own curiosity,
Yeah, exactly. And I do understand that part. It's just the making of the slides. Like I wouldn't even know how. I
Oh
would
my gosh,
actually
they're
like for you to
easy.
teach me.
I
Teach me
can
how.
definitely do that because they're so easy. You will be surprised at how easy they are.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll do that sometime.
If you can copy and paste, you're golden.
Do
Okay,
you do them in PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Or yeah. I use PowerPoint for work, so I can make slides, but I think there's a little rebel part of my brain that's kind of like, doing this, the book club and stuff. I guess PowerPoint reminds me of work is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
So,
I literally do no design, blank layout, copy and paste, and just blow it up so it can be seen. Nothing fancy whatsoever. So,
Well, I
well, it
still
looks
like
really
that.
great, and your thumbnails always look really good too.
well, thank you. So,
All right.
you want to dig in?
Yeah, so let's
dig.
start chapter 20. Fiber is necessary for a healthy gut. And the
That's what they
quote
say.
is, no organ in the body is so misunderstood, so slandered and maltreated as the colon. So Sir Arthur Hurst.
Now I wonder how old that quote is. Like,
I
you know
don't
what I
know.
mean?
It
Like, if
doesn't
it's
say. It sounds like an old person.
Yeah, it
I know.
does.
Either that or someone from the UK who has been knighted.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
Sir Elton John, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So the lie is fiber is good for you, and you should try to get as much fiber in your diet as possible. Fiber will help with constipation and irritable bowel syndrome. Fiber will help prevent diverticulitis and probably even colon cancer.
Yeah, and I taught that lie working as a GI nurse and preached that to so many people over the years and had no idea that there wasn't really any science to back it up.
That's really it's really sad that what we tell people and what we learn in nursing school is not even what we discover on our own that works. Like, just from our own bodies, I can tell you right now, I definitely don't need fiber. I might need a little fiber at times to slow it down.
Oh, but
And
less fat would do that.
I did recently give that tip on to new carnivores on YouTube. Like if you discover you're having a lot of diarrhea and you just throw some green beans in there because that always helps me. Like,
and there's people who do that to transition into a carnivore diet.
yeah,
They don't necessarily just go cold turkey. I mean, I did, but
I did too at first, but
when I did, I didn't have the diarrhea. I was just
I had diarrhea forever, like probably 6 months.
Oh
And
my.
and I still do sometimes. So I'll
Well,
throw some green beans in if I'm having,
for me, fat adaptation though was more a matter of like I would get indigestion at first when I
Mhm.
was trying to get fat adapted.
Oh,
And so I had to kind of big back off on the fat a little bit until and
yeah.
let my body get adapted. But then I also don't have a gallbladder.
Oh, okay, that's
Mm.
probably
No.
why then. Because my indigestion went completely away when I started eating all meat.
Well, it was funny because I was on like 40 milligrams of Pepsid twice a day. And then I got on the carnivore diet and I had breakthrough acid reflux. But then as I fat adapted, it got better and now I'm on nothing. I am completely off any antacids and I don't have any issues with
Yeah.
with GERD. So it was just a matter of getting over that hump,
Yeah.
you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, and it was really interesting too, just all the years that I worked as a GI nurse. Looking back when it comes to the fiber thing, it was always it's like I knew what to tell people, but I definitely noticed that people's response to the fiber was varied. It wasn't like there was a consistent, like, okay, you take this much of this type of fiber and your problems are going to be gone. It was
Mhm.
seemed like it was very hit and miss. And, so we would just try to encourage people to work on their ratios of soluble versus insoluble fiber. So it's like fiber was the answer and it was a matter of just kind of tweaking dosages and types.
Yeah.
Never even occurred to me that the problem is don't do fiber. Fiber is part of the problem because I mean, that was a completely foreign concept. But now that, reading through, there's there's no there's no actual evidence.
Nope.
So,
Not even.
I have to add something really that it was kind of funny this was probably 15 years ago. I was working at a long-term acute care hospital, and and looking back, I'm like, this makes sense. That this doctor understood that fiber wasn't exactly the way that we thought it was. So he had me, they would always have us add fiber when the patients had horrible diarrhea from the tube feeding.
Mm.
And I remember asking him, like, I thought fiber was supposed to help you go. So aren't you going to give that person worse diarrhea? And he said, well, no, it works in both ways. And
It,
I was like,
and it depends on the
Hmm.
type of fiber. It depends on the type of fiber too, because yes, it does add bulk to the stool. And so if your stool is really liquid, it can add the bulk and start to help it be formed. But then if you add too much bulk, it triggers the stretch receptors in your colon to push it through faster. And then, one type of fiber, like your insoluble fiber, tends to speed things up, whereas your soluble fiber tends to absorb fluid and kind of just tends to it can slow things down a little bit. But it's like even the GI docs, I could ask like 3-4 GI docs the same question and get 4 different answers.
yeah. He was the only doctor I've ever heard say that. Like, and I've been having patients on tube feeding with diarrhea for years. I've never had another doctor say to do that. But I don't know if it worked because I wasn't the
Yeah.
nurse the following days on that patient. So
Well, I worked with 14 gastroenterologists and we had a nursing team. So it's not like I was the only one, but I
yeah,
supported all 14. And so like when their particular patient called in and had issues, then if I had any questions, I would send it to that particular doc. And our nursing team was always like, we cannot get consistent answers. you know, because we're all dealing with hundreds of patients that are all spread across these 14 different doctors, and we could not get consistent answers from them. And so
Yeah.
that was definitely a known issue when I was working, and I think it made us even more frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And fiber was definitely one of the key things that was always just a big piece of confusion.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so he did mention here that these studies are based on a food frequency questionnaire, and I put one in the slide, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at I know you were at the book review I did with Carrie on Wednesday, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a book review. We were talking about food frequency questionnaires on our book review of Dr. Ead's book. So I thought I'd pull one in here. It's the first slide, just to talk about so it's kind of hard to see, but this is a food frequency questionnaire. This is how the data is gathered for these nutritional studies. So if you look at it, asks them, and this one, it was actually, how often in the last 3 months did you eat the following? Okay. And so it's asking
I don't know.
it's asking them to remember what they ate in the last 3 months. Now, in some of these studies, yeah, like in some of these studies, it was like the study that I talked about from Dr. Ead's book was on berries, and they had, over the course of 20 years, they had to fill this questionnaire out like 5 times, and it asked them, how much did you eat over the past year? And they had to remember. And if it was something seasonal, they had to like do math and spread it out on a per month basis. But I mean, even if you look at the breakdown, like in meat, they have all the meat pushed together in one category. Then in beef, they include stews, lasagna, pasta, pizza, meatloaf. I mean, this is what they do. They have all of these. This is what these studies are based off of.
And dairy has ice cream in it as well.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, granted, yeah, sure, that's dairy, but like we're not separating out the types or anything. That's
right. And you're
Then
talking
eggs.
oh, in the eggs, it says in baked
fried.
good.
Yeah.
And then in salad.
Yeah, right.
That's so weird.
So I just thought it would be interesting to look at the food frequency questionnaire, so that when he brought it up that these are what these studies are based off of, you can see how ridiculous it is. Like
Oops.
how are they supposed to remember how much pasta, how much spaghetti did you eat? And that's if you had spaghetti once a week over the past 3 months, that's classified under beef.
Which
that's so bizarre.
Yeah, because hello,
like
noodles, just like lasagna.
Least benign of all.
Yeah.
Or as Carnivore said, as if I have no idea, possible response. No,
that would be my response to most of it, I think.
Yeah, there should be a how would I know? I know, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, so many of these nutritional studies are the basis, the data collection is with these food frequency questionnaires, and so to me that alone invalidates it. It's like,
yeah,
absolutely.
And when you're only collecting info every 5 years over a 20-year period of time, that's gonna accurate. Are we gonna get
exactly?
I don't think I could tell you what I ate in the last week in a reliable way.
Right. Well, in they're trying to make correlations, obviously, between people who eat extra fiber, like all the fiber and your gut health. And he says most people who include many fiber-filled vegetables and fruits in their diet also eat diets that are healthier overall, and they live healthier lives, so they're less likely to smoke, drink alcohol heavily, or eat lots of processed foods. But the studies they don't factor in, there's no control for the confounding variables. And so it really, they haven't had anything that actually shows that the fiber is going to decrease your risk of, these GI illnesses with constipation. In fact, there's studies that show that that doing a carnivore diet, the people's constipation resolves.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's funny. Even one of my children, I was giving him some ribeye last night, and he was like, "Oh, I love this ribeye. It's just," he's like, "Give me that big fatty piece right there." And I
Yeah.
gave it to him, and then as he's walking down to his room, he said, "Yeah, Mom, and it keeps you regular too." And I was like, "Okay, yes, it does. You're
Listen.
absolutely right. I can't believe you
Wow.
discovered this."
Yeah, he's listening. So he says that when controlled studies are done on the topics of constipation, diverticulosis, and colon cancer, adding more fiber to the diet has no effect whatsoever on the outcome of the study. In fact, the less fiber the participants ate, the fewer symptoms of constipation they had. So that is basically, so it's all a big lie. And then fiber is an indigestible irritant to our bowels, can act as an anti-nutrient, preventing absorption of some vitamins and minerals we need.
And one thing he mentioned too is that the fiber that they talk about, although we're advised to eat like the healthy whole grains to get fiber and that kind of thing, that they really don't talk about the fiber that's in fruit and veg versus like the other fibers that are found in like the junk foods or the processed foods. And, in other words, those categories aren't really separated out.
Yeah.
So, and then you have like the cellulose, which is basically like wood shavings. And I've heard Dr. Berry talk about that before. He's like,
well, he mentions it. Yeah, he mentions it in the book.
Yeah.
Like what if you were told to actually eat sawdust?
Yep.
Yeah. So
it says that well, sugar, hold on. This MacBook and me just, oh my gosh, I want to go back to a regular computer so bad. So I just lost the page now.
so there's a question from while you're looking. There's a question from Darth Carnivore.
Okay.
Is fiber contextually beneficial if you're on a standard American diet?
I would say that that's probably possible.
I would think it would depend on the source.
I would say it'd be hard to avoid if you're eating a sad diet.
You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. That's for sure. I mean, I would think that, I know grains are really inflammatory. And like when we had our patients with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis flares, where their gut was really unhappy and they were having a lot of, rectal bleeding and diarrhea, even the GI docs told them to go on a low residue diet. So to cut way, way back on the fiber. So I think that the doctors would tell you, yes, that the fiber is beneficial, but those same doctors, if your gut is inflamed and unhappy, will tell you to stay away from the fiber. So it can heal.
One of the ways that they recommend, I don't know if your doctors did this or not, Lynn, but one of the things that some of the doctors that I follow will recommend is, what is it, the elemental diet? Basically, it's like just drinking, like tube feeding almost.
Well, they would recommend just,
I'm like, how can that be good for you?
It would really depend on how bad the person was and how bad off. But, in general, they would recommend a low residue diet, which still contains some fiber, but it's all the really processed down stuff, which is definitely not good. But if you avoid all of the whole grains and everything, the patients would feel better. So the lower the fiber they did, the better they felt.
Yeah, but they should have made it real food and not liquid, like, it's like protein drinks and stuff.
Well, they probably, protein drinks aren't good, but some people are so bad that they do need the gut rest in order to heal. So I have a friend who had a bleeding bottom problems, but no way would she listen to me. She loves veggies. Well, yeah, it's unfortunate because it's just what's been told everybody, So yeah, it's unfortunate.
And for many of us, it's not necessarily the veggies that we loved. I mean, it was the stuff that we would put on them. I mean, like, at least for me, like, I used to enjoy a salad, but when you think about it, the salad had the vinaigrette dressing, and then I would throw some nuts on there and some berries, and the slices of chicken maybe, or shrimp, whatever. You know what I'm saying, though? But it would be the other stuff that went with
Yeah.
the veggies,
I-
or it would be steamed broccoli with the garlic sauce on it, or garlic butter. It wasn't just I was eating the broccoli. And so I think sometimes when people say I love my veggies, it's like, do you really? Or is it the other extra stuff that's on there?
Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you can, I mean, what I would think, maybe, Jeannie, a good suggestion for your friend might be to maybe have her pick out 1 or 2 veggies that she would like to keep, and then maybe try cutting out others, or just pick 1 or 2 in the beginning to cut out, and then just gradually, like, things that you might think would be more irritating. Because some things, like a potato, for
Greens.
example, might not be as irritating as, like, lettuce. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
lettuce, I can't do it. Yeah.
greens are really bad. I mean, there's a reason why they call them roughage. And I'd be
Mhm.
curious to know that, like, specifically what the bleeding bottom is. Is it hemorrhoids? Is it, Crohn's disease, ulcerative
Mhm.
colitis, proctitis? What is it? I mean, so I'm going to embarrass myself like I usually do, but on my trip, I was carnivore, but I had a really hard time. Like, I have to do the lion diet typically, and because I have the histamine issues because of my mast cell disease, and I was not able to completely avoid the higher histamine foods. And it does take several days to kind of catch up with this. Well, the last day I was at the Dallas airport getting ready to come home, and the only thing I can find that really was half decent to eat was this omelet from IHOP. And I swear they probably used seed oils, and I ended up with an upset tummy.
Mhm.
And by the time I got home, I had a hemorrhoid, and I had some blood in my stool, or
Mm.
some blood tins of mucus. It wasn't in the stool. So I have, and after 2 days of just back to eating my beef and lamb, it cleared up. So
And they very well may have also put, like, what is it? Pancake mix in with the eggs. I have heard restaurants do that. Some of them will do that too.
And I would say
And
that
that was probably what got you.
maybe it was because, I was not that happy, and but it did clear up quickly when I got back, to eating just the meat and the lamb. So, even something like hemorrhoids can be helped with a carnivore diet. I've heard so many people talk about their hemorrhoids clearing up.
Yeah.
So I found the part that I was going to read a while ago.
Okay.
So basically, it says, in the same respect, this is just carrying on from something else. The fact that eating more fibrous vegetables and fruits is correlated with decreased risks of colon and bowel problems does not prove that the fiber is preventing those conditions. Most people who include many fiber-filled vegetables and fruit in their diet also eat diets that are healthier overall, and they live healthier lives. They're less likely to smoke, drink alcohol heavily, or eat lots of processed junk food. In many of the studies, these confounding variables are not controlled for, and thus may be the cause of the increased risk of colon bowel disease rather than the lack of fiber. I thought that was interesting.
Right. And that's the problem with the nutritional studies, is that there are all these confounding variables. So,
all right. And then let's see here. He goes on to say that fiber is an indigestible irritant to our bowels, and it can act as an anti-nutrient, preventing absorption of some vitamins and minerals that we do need. If I told you to eat a cup of sawdust full of fiber, each day in order to keep your bowels healthy, cancer-free, and moving regularly, you might think I was crazy, but the fiber many experts recommend that we eat actually contains sawdust or wood fibers that are very much like sawdust. Um, and the recommendation does not square with how our ancestors ate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he made the point that they wouldn't be, that there was no evidence that they were purposefully looking for things that had a fiber content. And that makes total sense. Not that they never ate vegetables, but it's just that that wasn't huge on their list. I mean, the biggie on their list was getting meat and fat. I mean, that was the big one.
As far as our ancestors, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And definitely a lot of the people who, like he said, a lot of the people who ate the higher fiber diets and more fruits and vegetables also didn't smoke and drink heavily and have all these other things that are, so you can't really say it's the fiber. Maybe it's the fact that they didn't abuse substances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And likewise, you can't say that in the case of like when we were looking at the image that Lynn was sharing about the different meats, and it's like if you look at a hamburger, for example, or even worse yet, they actually had it included with lasagna, the beef with the lasagna.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big confounder right there, because you're not separating out. Like, I would just think noodles would be a total separate category. Like, you would more separate the ingredients in a sense rather than lumping together, because, and then they'll turn around and, for example, say that it was the meat that causes the problems. And it's like, hello, you got another major thing over here. It's called, the noodles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that is the good thing about the carnivore diet is if you are doing really super strict carnivore, which I think you should do at least in the beginning to, see what you do and don't tolerate, kind of as an elimination diet, you're dealing with one ingredient foods. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I like to fix them in a pretty simple way, using mostly just salt, and skipping most other spices because it digests better for me, and it just feels more natural and normal.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't love spices, I do, and I love big elaborate dishes, but when we're talking about getting ourselves back to health, I think it's real important to go pretty basic, at least
My
at
gut
first.
likes it more simple.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. So we have
And I was talking to
another
my
question
mom.
too.
I was talking to my mom, and she said, she was talking about how that's what she's always preferred. She grew up on a farm, and that's the way they ate. They would have like a meat, and they'd probably have some potatoes and vegetables too, but they would have like a meat, and the meat would be cooked simply. It wouldn't be like, some elaborate dish.
Yeah. What would a proper experiment look like to prove the impact of fiber? Literally, you'd have to control for everything else other than fiber. I would think that you would need to,
And it would be illegal because you can't house people. I mean,
right. You can't lock
I don't know that it would be illegal, but it would be very difficult to do.
Yeah, it would be hard. And you'd have to definitely trust that people are honest. But I would think that you would have to have like pre-done meals that you supply to people. And the only thing different between the two of the groups would be the fiber content.
And then just making sure that they have comparable lifestyles. For example, you would know that, okay, this group, okay, there's smokers and people who drink or whatever. And then these people over here, they work out, they have a better lifestyle, they get better sleep, just sort of accounting for those things. So you would have those things would be known, and you would have two groups of people, one group that would, work out and stuff and maybe not eat the fiber. Then you would have a group that works out and stuff that does eat the fiber, for example. So you would make sure that the groups were similar in other ways so that you would be actually getting a good comparison, a true comparison.
Or in a lot of studies that they do, like even on drugs and stuff, they do have maybe a variety of people, but like for every person in the control group that has specific characteristics, they match them with somebody in the test group. And so say if you have somebody that works out, you know, or it's like a runner or whatever, you have a runner in both groups and they're like around the same age and everything. But then what happens is that if you have one of these people, they drop out of the study, you lose both of them. You have to eliminate both of them.
I think and to not have confounding factors, you would still have to have them housed where you could observe, because people still lie.
They do lie, right? Exactly.
They want to do the right thing. They want to help. So they would be like, oh, I can't resist this chocolate bar, but oh, don't tell them about that, you know.
I have to do it on prisoners.
Yeah.
And there have been some diet studies
unethical.
done. Yeah. There have been some done in the past that were very revealing. I know that
for sure.
Talked about in Gary Taubes's book, and I believe in Nina Teicholz's book, and probably others. But they talked about those studies like from the 50s and 60s that were done on like prisoners. And then it was also, conscientious objectors or whatever, people who, you know, didn't want to be drafted or whatever. Yeah. So there were, and I think one was in maybe a mental hospital.
Yeah.
Where that was the seed oil substitution one. Like it substituted the animal fats for the seed oils and stuff. And apparently, so there
we should get moving. We've only covered one chapter.
That's what I was. So the homework at the end of the chapter is read the blog post, A Carnivorous Diet by Amber O'Hearn, and then a paper, The Myths and Misconceptions About Chronic Constipation. And then our next, and then one more, World Carnivore Tribe blog post. And so you can check those out if you want. So the next chapter is chapter 21, Eating Red Meat Causes Cancer, obviously. And the quote is, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, Marcus Aurelius. And the lie, red meat is not good for you, and eating more than a single small serving daily will increase your risk of colon cancer or increase your cancer risk overall. So what say you?
Well, and again, he says the support is a food frequency questionnaire.
Yeah.
Right? So we've already exhausted the ridiculousness of that. But you know, he did a lot of this is the same things, like except when it comes to the red meat eaters, they tend to go against the health recommendations. So unlike with fiber, the people who eat a lot of fruits and vegetables tend to be avoiding the alcohol and the smoking. He's basically saying that some of the confounding variables in the meat group is that they tend to go against health guidelines. So they're the ones that are more likely drinking more alcohol and smoking.
The rebels, the smokers and the drinkers,
the rebels.
Smokers,
yes. They're
the partiers.
They're drinking, they're smoking. So it makes it even more interesting. So I do have a couple more slides. Okay. So I did some slides on this one. So the next one is the hierarchy of evidence, because I'm going to show you a couple things. So the best so most of the things that we look at are epidemiological studies. They're kind of down at towards the beginning of this, where they're just making observations. But the best evidence is going to be a meta-analysis or systematic review. So if you want to know, so that's basically where they take all the randomized controlled trials on a particular topic and they look at all of them and they come to conclusions of this is basically, it's the best type of study you can do. All of the randomized controlled trials together tell us this. So go to the next slide. Okay, so I looked this up. This was on PubMed. And says the risk of colorectal cancer in relation to frequency and total amount of red meat consumption. So this is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So that's the top tier of evidence. Okay. And I brought this up as an example. This is like what they consider best evidence. So they said that this is based on 22 studies and it was a meta-analysis. It says confirmed the carcinogen effect of the consumption of over 50 grams of red meat per day for the colon. Now, but if you look at the relative risk, all of the numbers are below 2, and anything below 2 is insignificant. Okay.
That's why you can't just read the conclusions on these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Look at the
regardless to the
conclusion.
fact, but this is the interesting thing. So basically they spelled out here that all of the relative risk, not a single one of these numbers is above 2. So we know that that's insignificant, but the conclusion still says red meat intake is associated with elevated risk of developing colorectal cancer. The frequency of red meat consumption rather than the total amount consumed of consumed meat is associated with a higher risk of colorectal carcinogenesis. So even though the meta-analysis and all the statistics were significantly irrelevant, they still concluded that meat causes cancer, colon cancer. I was just like, seriously? This is the
baffling.
science that's being thrown at us.
Yeah, this is their proof.
This is their proof. And so when you deal with all these doctors that all they have time for is to take a look at read the conclusion. Oh, that's for the next chapter.
I didn't mean to do that.
Okay. To look
Yes,
at
you
the
did.
conclusion. This is the conclusion that they're reading. But like one paragraph above, all you have to do is look at the numbers and see that no, it's significantly insignificant. It's statistically insignificant.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that was my little rabbit hole that I went down for this chapter.
Yeah. And then, of course, you had the nurses' health study, which showed no additional risk associated in women who ate. Well, actually, that was one. Never mind. I'm behind. But this is interesting, though. It went back with the fiber. Sorry,
So
I was on the wrong
basically,
line.
what
Yeah,
I'm
the
gathering
nurses'
from these
study
two
basically,
chapters,
yeah. But
what
that's
I'm gathering from these two chapters is that it's identical. The fiber and the red meat. We could say the same thing about both of them. It's epidemiological studies, they're garbage, and on to the next chapter, pretty much.
But one key thing back to the first point is that even though the meat eaters tend to drink more, smoke more, and balk at all the health guidelines, they were still significantly statistically insignificant increased risk. So it not only isn't the meat, it really isn't the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you would think that with all the other stuff that they do or would typically do, I don't know if they tracked in those particular studies like which ones actually did or how many smoked and how many did this, but or if they put those numbers in the study for you to see.
So if you take
That's
away,
a good point.
Yeah, so like if you actually took two groups and took away all the drinking and smoking, it may even show that it's less likely to cause colorectal cancer if you eat red meat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so homework on this chapter is the book Eat Meat and Stop Jogging. Common advice on how to get fit is keeping you fat and making you sick by Mike Sheridan.
All right.
And I believe I have downloaded that book from, if you have Amazon, the Kindle Unlimited. I had gotten that book for free because through the Kindle Unlimited app on your phone, you can't pay for books anyway. You have to purchase them through Amazon. But I got that book for free, like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it may still be out there if anybody's interested. And if they have Kindle Unlimited, you can just borrow the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the rest of my slides aren't till chapter 24.
Okay, so chapter 22, you must eat lots of carbohydrates to fuel your brain. The quote is, whenever a doctor cannot do good, he must be kept from doing harm, Hippocrates. And the lie is you must eat plenty of carbohydrates every day, or your brain and other body parts will not have enough energy to function properly. And we all know that's not true. But there are still a lot of people who believe that the brain only runs on sugar. It can only
But
run on.
here's the problem. The way the body processes food, you don't have to eat sugar to get the glucose that the brain needs. And that's what
Yeah.
people don't realize. So yes, they are technically correct when they say, well, certain parts of your body, including the brain, require glucose. Well, yeah, that's true.
But the
But
brain can also use ketones.
the brain can also use ketones,
The
and what
brain,
glucose it needs, the liver makes it.
the mitochondria, the cells of the brain will prefer ketones to glucose. And, you know, just finishing up the Change Your Body, Change Your Mind by Dr. Georgia Ede in the book review that we did this last week was so fascinating to learn about how glucose can easily accumulate in the brain and cause like because the insulin can't quite keep up. If you eat a lot of carbohydrates and stuff, the insulin in the brain, it can't keep up with the glucose. It's not like in the rest of the body where there tends to be like the higher your glucose level, the higher the insulin. She said in the brain is kind of the opposite. When you get your glucose is too high in the brain, your insulin actually is low and can't process all that glucose. And so you tend to have all this glucose hanging out in your brain that the brain can't use. And so it actually does prefer ketones to the glucose.
Darth
So-
Carnivore had a question, and I don't really understand the question.
So let's see. So to provide context of relative risk below 2, is that like the likelihood of dying from car accidents or air travel? Just trying to think of what a relative risk below 2 is like. I haven't looked at the stats for those, so I don't know off the top of my head. So, but relative risk, unlike absolute risk, I know we've talked about this before, but I'll give this example again. So, like if you've got 100 people in each group and you have like one person have an adverse effect in the test group, but 2 people have an adverse effect in the control group, the total risk is 1% versus 2%. Because it's based on the 100, but a relative risk looks at 1 person versus 2 people. So you've got 100% higher risk. That's relative risk. So it's it's already kind of built in, inflated when you come
I didn't understand what he meant by below 2, though.
Well, I mean, that's supposedly the cutoff for what's statistically significant. I don't know, honestly, what the air travel.
Okay.
Yeah, what air travel and car accidents are like. Like, yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
Scott says, so my brain feeling like Laffy Taffy is more correct than I thought. If you're eating too many carbs, yes. So, but Big Food is happy to support the lie. He says, because the carbohydrates found in sugar and grains provide cheap ingredients that manufacturers can use to make all manner of tasty snacks. So there's a lot of money in carbohydrates. So, but he did talk about the societies that spent their entire lives eating basically a 0 carbohydrate diet for months at a time. He talked about the Inuits. And he talked about several other places, around the world, the Maasai of Eastern Africa, the
Kukatan in Russia,
Sempro and Rendille warriors of Africa, certain nomad tribes of Mongolia, the Sioux of South Dakota, and the Gauchos from Brazil. So we have all of these people who have been on a completely carnivore diet for a long time, and their health was great. So the whole idea, it just is not supported by our history.
Yeah. And then he says some cells in the body need glucose for energy. The red blood cells do not have a nucleus or their own mitochondria, and thus they have no means of producing their own energy or burning fat as fuel. Certain cells in the brain and eye also need glucose for energy. However, your liver is perfectly capable of making all the glucose your body needs through a process called gluconeogenesis, which we're all quite familiar with, in this community at least.
Yeah.
Because the liver can produce as much glucose as says these cells need to function properly, there's no need to eat carbohydrates.
That's right. And it says the liver can convert both amino acids, which come from our meat, and fatty acids into glucose. For the cells that require glucose for fuel, you don't need to eat carbs. So our body is built to live without carbs and still provide ourselves the glucose for those particular parts of our body that needs it. He did mention some cuts of meat have 1 or 2 grams of carbohydrates. Of course, I had to go look. The only cut of meat I could find that had any carbs was top loin petite roast. It has 1.1 grams of carbs per 100 grams of the meat. I never eat that cut. So
yeah, I don't either.
Oh, I haven't either, I don't guess.
Yeah.
So this paragraph.
Roast.
So this paragraph, before we go on, I wanted to kind of highlight because this is really essential for somebody who's eating the way that we do to know. And it says most of the cells in your body can shift from needing carbohydrates as fuel to being able to burn some form of fat as fuel. Every human body has the biochemical machinery to make this shift from being a carbohydrate burner to being a fat burner. It just takes a little time to make the conversion. In no way does this limit your metabolic flexibility. Your body is always capable of burning carbs as fuel in the future if you'd ever want that to happen again.
So you can go back if you're not happy.
Yeah. So we will give you 100% of your money back. We got a money back guarantee.
Yes. Yes. And he said the next thing too, he says for the few cells in your body that cannot use fat for fuel, your liver is happy to use gluconeogenesis to produce enough glucose to feed the cell just what they need. So
yeah. Carnivore Scott said, but my silly tongue prefers ice cream over meat. Taming the tongue is the battle.
Ain't that the truth?
I agree.
I've learned to take out my whip.
I have learned the hard way because I'm a big, my brain talks me into a lot of things. And it's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Oh,
let's do it.
It's my addicted brain is what it is.
It's all a temptation.
It can rationalize anything.
Yeah.
If I want to, and I within reason, but it can for sure rationalize some low carb chocolate around, Easter. I mean, why wouldn't you? And then every single time it's like, no, dummy, you can't do that.
Well,
it don't feel good.
And then with me, if I did in the past, I haven't been doing it in the last, since I started the carnivore diet. But in the past, when I'd rationalize it, I would feel fine initially. And then I'd say, oh, I feel fine. I could have another. And then like several days later, I'm suffering. So it's not always
my problem. Right away. I can't just get a little bit of the low carb chocolate and eat a couple squares.
Right.
I'm just like,
I would be better off if it was like antabuse for alcohol. Like as soon as you drink the alcohol, you're sick. Like, it's not that way though. It's like, I feel fine. So I'm like, awesome. I guess I can eat this.
Well, and see, I'm lucky in that respect because when it comes to sugar, from my chronic candida, if I allow any amount of sugar of any kind, and I mean, I'm talking about fruit sugar, even, any kind of sugar, if I have, sometimes a little too much dairy, which I've gotten mostly away from the liquid dairy, but if I have liquid dairy, it'll come right back and it's miserable. It makes me physically ill. So it is kind of like
antabuse. Well, I guess that's one silver lining, I guess.
Because otherwise I'd be knee deep in donuts right now. I mean, just, not to trigger anybody, but so homework for this chapter was the book Real Food Keto: Applying Nutritional Therapy to Your Low Carb High Fat Diet by Jimmy Moore and Christine Moore. And the book Eat Rich, Live Long, Mastering the Low Carb and Keto Spectrum for Weight Loss and Longevity by Ivor Cummings and Jeffrey Gerber. He's always got so many more books than I've even heard of.
I know.
I remember Jimmy Moore, and
Yeah.
this was before I got on YouTube and stuff when I was researching diet and stuff, because he'd been around for a while, and he used to have a blog and stuff, and I just hadn't seen anything by him lately. So I don't know. We'll have to
I guess it was a couple years ago I watched some of his videos, but I don't know if he's still.
Yeah, I was wondering after seeing that, I was like, oh yeah, because I used to read several different blogs out there, and
so Darth Carnivore said Jimmy Moore recommendation didn't age well. So maybe he knows, he knows what happened to Jimmy Moore.
Oh, yikes.
Tell us what happened to Jimmy Moore.
Oh no.
Oh, well, okay.
Ooh.
What?
Yikes. Yeah, maybe Dr.
Well.
Barry needs to take that one off of the recommendation.
Maybe that's why we're no, I know that's not the only reason. We're redoing.
Nicole would say.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Okay.
The word.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I knew. So there was a couple of things he said that were kind of like, I was just like, what? He kind of like changed his, and I can't remember all the details of it, but he was starting to get real political and just, it was just weird to me. I don't know, but I didn't watch him a lot. So I don't know all the details.
I lost track of him after I read the blogs. I never did watch him on YouTube. So
maybe he doesn't blog much in jail.
Probably not. But I mean, this was like 2015.
Is he actually in jail?
I hope so.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Let's
all
move
right.
on.
Well, okay, that was interesting.
Yeah, that was that. Thank you, audience.
We're glad that.
There's a reason we do this live, right?
And now we know.
That's right.
Okay. So chapter 23, grilling meat causes cancer. And I'll never forget my one of my college professors told us this. And I was like, huh? Like
right, that makes no sense.
So the quote is
for centuries.
I know. The quote is, but it appears common and has been found all over the world in all ages that meat is considered the superior food, vegetables inferior or secondary. And the quote is by Wilhelmer Stephenson. I hope I did not butcher that.
Sounds Scandinavian.
And the lie is eating charred meat cooked over an open flame will increase your risk of colon cancer or increase your risk of cancer overall. So,
yes, and this is based on rodent studies who are fed, who first of all are not naturally carnivore anyway. And they're fed what they isolate the carcinogen and they just feed it to them. Is that what they did?
Let's see here.
Consume the
poorly designed.
Yes, the rodents in the studies consumed the supposed cancer-causing compounds, not the whole food, at a level hundreds of times the amount the average human would eat. So that's the World Health Organization. They did several epidemiological observational studies that showed a weak correlation. And then there was a few rodent studies that were poorly designed that seem to show an increased risk of cancer in the rodent. But there have been no randomized controlled trials in humans that support this lie as being truth. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And it says also there are multiple observational studies that don't show any correlation between grilling meat and cancer risks. So, super weak study. It shows and it doesn't show. It basically is meaningless.
Yeah. And he really kind of comes down on the World Health Organization as basically being very emotionally invested.
We saw some of that in recent years.
Oh yeah, they're emotionally invested.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
That's right. Yep. I think that it's not hard to convince people nowadays that the WHO is a little biased.
Yeah,
And yeah, so, but it's interesting. The point he said was to the average observer, and we need to be really wary of this. To the average observer, a passionate researcher seems very believable.
Mm-hmm.
However, being passionate and emotional about a topic does not make you correct.
As a matter of fact, as Dr. Berry often says, usually if a person is very passionate and emotional about something,
They're probably wrong.
that's probably not the person that you're wanting to talk to about that, to be objective, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a true scientist is okay with being proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, because they're not emotionally invested in their hypothesis.
And actually, a true scientist actually wants to be proven wrong, because if that evidence exists, they want to know
they
about
don't,
it.
they want it to be
That's
known
what
that
science
it's
is
wrong.
supposed to be about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A true scientist is not going to want incorrect information out there. Wait, humans are not just big rats.
Well, some of them are.
I was going to say, some of them might be.
I am very big and rat-like.
I had pet rats when I was in high school.
Oh, did you?
My brother did. My brother had rats.
Rats are cute, and they have like really cute personalities. I brought home 6 baby rats when I was a junior in high school. My chemistry class, my teacher was about to feed them to the snake in our class. Of course, he probably went out and bought more and fed them, but I was like, no, they're so cute. So he says, if you take them home, I will not, obviously feed them. So I came home from school with 6 baby rats, and my mom.
What did the snakes eat, though?
He probably went out afterwards and got more rats and ate and fed them. Yeah. Mistake he made was mentioning he was going to feed them when I was in class. And I'm like, no. Yeah. Anyways, so yes, I ended up with bringing 6 baby rats home. They were so cute.
Agree.
So cute. But they did not eat the same diet that we ate. And so doing a test with, supposed cancer-causing compounds found in meat on a rat just logically doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, just what makes less sense to me is the fact that humans have been cooking on a flame since time began.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if that were going to kill us, I mean, if that were truly that harmful, then we would have stopped doing it. He mentions that in the book. But I mean, it's like we just wouldn't have done that anymore, because we would have learned that that's not safe.
That's right. Yeah. We adapt and we learn. If something is not good for us, then they would have changed their cooking methods.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
My puppies won't be quiet, so I have to mute sometimes.
That's okay.
But
yeah, right. and they feed them thousands of times. He said that they feed them thousands of times more than the amount that a person would eat. And so, so he says that if the key information is the thousands of times the normal level. So in other words, you shouldn't eat more than 100 ribeye steaks daily.
Yes, please don't.
Yeah.
Even if they're thin, you should only eat 50.
That's right. Okay. And these carcinogens, some of the carcinogens, the acrylamides appear in some foods naturally, and they're in any fried food and any food that has been browned. And then and there's also a carcinogen in vegetables. Cooking vegetables causes high levels of a compound called benzopyrene. So but I mean, it doesn't make sense that you can take a study and you can isolate the compound and you can feed like 1,000 times more to an animal and then draw a conclusion from that.
Yeah.
Well, and they're eating the compound without the context of the food, the other, where the compound came from, or how the compound would normally be ingested if it were, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you just isolate the compound, but there's no, like, the complete food product isn't there. Right. So that just doesn't, I mean, that looks like they were really trying to just poison the rat. Like, here, we'll just give him enough to kill him.
Right. Yeah, which is the point. You think that if they were true scientists, they would, even if they are going to isolate a compound, that they would give them the amount that would be reasonable for one person to eat in a day, and feed them that amount.
So the take home is that rats and mice in the wild eat berries, bugs, grain, and sometimes raw meat. They never eat grilled meat, and they never have. To feed them high levels of compounds, well, there goes my page again. There it is. Okay. To feed them high levels of compounds produced by grilled meats is sure to upset their system because it is not their ancestral food. In the
Right.
studies to determine a relationship between grilled meat and cancer, the rodents ate levels of these compounds thousands of times higher than even the most fervent human carnivore could eat. So this obviously doesn't prove much.
Yeah.
And then homework is the book The Big Fat Surprise: Why Butter, Meat, and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet by Nina Teicholz. That is one that I'm wanting to read. I don't know about
Me
you guys.
too. We should
Me
probably choose our
too.
next book. Maybe that should be it.
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe
let's,
so.
because I have it. I just haven't read it.
Okay, let's do that
And then
one
we
next.
got one, and then we got one chapter left, and I
Because
have
we
to speed us
to
up here.
order it. We need to order it now. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll
okay.
talk about that, but I have to speed us up here.
Okay.
So chapter 24, eating processed meats causes cancer. I feel like this is just a big redundancy, like not in content, but like all of these apply to the same principles we've been talking
But I
about. But
do have slides on this one that are interesting.
okay, but here's
So
the quote: "Beware of false knowledge; it is more dangerous than ignorance." By George Bernard Shaw. The lie: processed meats such as bacon, sausage, bologna, and hot dogs contain high levels of nitrates and nitrites, which will cause you to have cancer. So beware, people. Don't eat your hot dogs. All right, so slides. Let's see here.
so he said that the amount of nitrates and nitrites in organic uncured is higher. And so he was basically saying that don't worry about them. But so I'm like, and of course I was naturally skeptical, going, wait a minute, I've heard so much about this. So I
Yeah,
did look up. So from the Cleveland Clinic, they said the nitrates and the nitrites aren't really a problem. And it's these nitrosamines that they said are the problem. And then, so they said that with like, even though like the organic foods that say that they don't have the added nitrates and nitrites, they get the nitrates and the nitrites still in there, but it's from like beet juice or celery juice powder. The Cleveland Clinic said those ones will not turn into these nitrosamines. The nitrosamines happens from cooking. And so they listed here some of the foods, and a lot of the like deli style meats, bacon, hot dogs, salami, sausages, some cheeses, processed cheese and cheese spreads. He says they say what makes the nitrates and nitrites in some foods problematic is not in others. Several factors may be involved, including the food prep method. So when meat is cooked at high heat, like during frying or grilling, nitrates and nitrites can react with amino acids in the meat protein to form nitrosamines. And most nitrosamines are known carcinogens, which means they're associated with increased risk of cancer. Okay, so I was not done digging. So you can go to the next slide.
okay.
So I was like, okay, well, like, so I looked at this journal, the Journal of Agriculture and Food Research, these nitrosamines and processed meats exposure and all sorts in formation and mitigation strategies. So you can go to the next slide. This is just the title. So I looked to see, okay, how many of these actual nitrosamines are in the foods we eat. Now, this is just a little snippet of the chart, but if you look at the numbers, they're very small, right? They're tiny. And so I think the biggest one here, well, let's just say hot dogs is 2.1. That's it, 2.1. Okay. So go to the next slide. Okay. So what to know and do about possible nitrosamines in your medication. So apparently nitrosamines are not just in food. So when it comes to talking about drugs, then you get the FDA website that talks about, we want to make sure your medication is safe. So there are certain drugs that contain these nitrosamines. Angiotensin 2 receptor blockers. Okay, that is any heart medication that you have that ends in sartan. If the generic ends in sartan, it's an ARB. Ranitidine, which is a acid blocking medication, nizatidine also, and metformin, okay, have been recalled because of nitrosamine impurities. Now, I remember when, as a GI nurse, when ranitidine was taken off the shelf because they certain manufacturers, they exceeded just barely, but they exceeded the levels that were acceptable. Okay, so remember the hot dog was what, 2.3, right? Okay, so go to the next slide. So I decided, well, let's see what the recommended acceptable upper limits of nitrosamine in drugs is. And this is one page of 27 pages. And look at the recommended 1,500 nanograms per day. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. So they're allowing you to have this many nanograms per day in the drugs that you take, but yet they're complaining about 2.3, I think it was nanograms per kilogram. And in 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds of hot dog. You're not going to eat 2.2
Wow.
pounds of hot dogs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm like, okay, so they're freaking out over nitrates and nitrites in meat because it can turn into these nitrosamines, but yet they're pumping us full of them in the medications and they find this level acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my
Things
mic
that make you go, huh?
Huh?
Things
Drop
that make
that
you
mic,
go,
girl.
Mic drop.
yeah.
All right.
Wow.
I'm trying to get my boys to take a shower while we were doing this. I'm like calling them on the phone. So I had to mute myself. All right. So let's see here. Well, I feel like she's just said it all.
Well, I was like, come on, I got to research this a little bit more.
I got something. This is really, really interesting. Would you be surprised to hear that more than 90% of the nitrites you swallow each day do not come from food at all, but from your saliva?
Yes.
That's
Well,
right.
It's true, and it really puts the final nail in this myth's coffin. Your body naturally produces hundreds of times more nitrates in your saliva each day than you could possibly get if you ate nothing but processed meat all day. Should we
But
outlaw
maybe
your
not as much,
spit
but maybe not as
as
much as if you take
possible?
those drugs.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Should we outlaw your spit as a possible carcinogen? Maybe. You should definitely stop if you fear nitrites. Definitely stop swallowing your own saliva. Carry a spit
There
cup.
you go. If you're afraid of it.
And
And the FDA website said for these drugs like metformin, well, we don't have any alternatives, so we're not going to make them recall it. I'm thinking, yeah, well, maybe if they went on a carnivore diet or a low carb diet, they wouldn't have to be on their metformin.
Yeah.
So they are okay with allowing over 1,000 with a drug because, there's no other alternatives. So please don't spit on me. Yeah, well, you just have to swallow your own saliva, which we do all day long. So.
And then also, well, I guess you probably talked about that. Let's see, the nitrates occur naturally in celery and beets, and they actually use those for apparently for like medicine, or they're looking into the positive things. So it just seems to me, and I know like they always talk about the super beets, for example, the powders and stuff that you can get, and so it's supposed to help you like with your what is it, nitric oxide in your body, which is supposed to dilate your, it helps blood pressure and stuff like that. And so I'm just like,
and they do,
basically,
there are benefits.
Yeah. So basically though, it's like you can't have meat because meat has those things, but you can have the beets and, we can extract it and we can put it into drugs and that's okay. And the logic behind that just isn't.
And then the celery, is used to cure right, some bacon or something. So in other words, that way they can put on the package that it doesn't contain any nitrates or nitrites. Is it nitrates?
Both.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so they can put that on the package, but it
Mhm.
actually does because there's more in the celery
Yep.
than anything. And people are just juicing celery and drinking it. So they're obviously not that worried about it, or maybe they just don't even have a clue.
Well, they're not worried about it. They're just trying to demonize meat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, at this point, they'll just say anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So let's see here. Wrapping up this chapter. Let's see. The take home is this lie is another great example of a situation in which researcher bias and personal beliefs have been ensconced in nutrition dogma. I feel like this is just the trend of the last 5 chapters.
Yeah.
When you look at the research with a critical eye, the lie completely falls apart. When you discover that uncured meat contains more nitrates than inexpensive processed meat, the situation becomes embarrassing. When you understand that your own saliva is by far the greatest source of nitrates in your body, the myth becomes completely laughable. So the homework is web article, The Nitrate and Nitrite Myth, Another Reason to Not Fear Bacon by Chris Kresser. And a web article, Does Banning Hot Dogs and Bacon Make Sense? By Sandy Swark, BSN RN CCP. So that brings us to chapter 25, which we haven't, which will be for next week. So
Yeah, so we'll just finish the book next week.
yeah.
Yep. Finish the book out.
Yeah.
All right,
So we're
so
going
we
to do
wanna
5
do the-
chapters next week, finish it up, and
So we
Be
want
done
to
with
do the
it.
big fat lie next.
I'm in. Yeah.
sure, sounds good to me.
Yeah, we better, because I
I
have
like
we have
this.
to order
I
it.
like this way of deciding. Like it's like whatever we come across, and we're all like, "Hey, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it." So
Well, I've been wanting to read that book for a
me
while.
too. Me too.
Okay, then it's a done deal.
All
All
right.
right.
So,
Oh, you guys are the best.
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you. Jeannie with
love
2
her.
ends.
Thank you,
So
thank you
Jeannie
for
with 2
all the
ends.
contribution. Man, we learned
Yes.
some stuff today.
Thank you so much, guys. Errol says, "Hi,
Hey.
everyone."
Hey, Errol.
We're
So
just wrapping it up.
I just love our our live chat, and I think this wouldn't be quite the same. Like we could edit a lot of the errors that we make and stuff. And like I said something dumb last week that I was like, oh, smacking myself for. I can't even remember what it was. Oh, it was basically with the thyroid and where the TSH and it was all wrong. But anyway. So we look like idiots sometimes and live.
Some of the stuff is
For you
confusing.
to see.
I think we just look like real people.
Real people.
Yeah. But if we ever say anything really dumb, I mean, guys, it's
Call
live.
us out.
We can't edit it.
Yeah. Well, let us know if we say anything that's really stupid
Yeah.
or just plain wrong, or we're completely off track.
Or no, trust me, I guarantee you, I've already caught it on the replay because I always rewatch and I'm like, you dummy. But we love it, guys. It's so fun and it's great having you guys here. And we have such a tight knit group, of
I'm
people
learning so much too.
Me too. Me too. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah, me too.
I am too.
Anyway, guys, come see us on our individual YouTube channels. I am Nurse Kim at Nurse Kimberly Lane. Lynn is at Midlife Carnivore. Carrie is at My Meatomorphosis with an O. And anything else you guys want to say? Y'all have anything coming up that you need to plug or anything?
I'm just busy. I'm busy working on the documentary, Healing Humanity. So, I've been a little less active. Well, and of course, being out of town and stuff, I've been a little less active on my YouTube channel, but I didn't get to do any weigh-in last Monday because I didn't have my scale with me. So I don't know what to expect, but I'm doing my weigh-in tomorrow and I'm posting a video and I feel like my belly's bigger. So I don't know what's going to happen, but travel does that.
Well,
yeah, I'm waiting on a single lab to come back. I had gotten.
I know which one it is. Is it the protein, oh,
Yeah, the
I think I
glycated albumin, but
glycated, yeah,
he ended
glycated
up,
albumin.
look, he was really cool too. Like he looked it up and stuff, but the lab company didn't do the glycated albumin, but they do the fructosamine. He said, which is real
Oh,
close. And so he was actually working with, like, help me find one, that he
oh,
could send. And he put the codes on there. So I'm thinking I may not even have to pay out of pocket for those. I think
oh, cool.
but he's a really cool guy. And
So
yeah,
sorry, Carrie, but to get
no,
this straight, so the fructosamine test, is that like the fructose equivalent of seeing what the glucose is doing to our red blood
no,
cells?
it's just using more proteins. Like the glycated albumin uses only one, but this one uses other proteins. So it's
Mhm.
got albumin plus other things in
Why
it.
do they call it fructosamine?
That's a good question. But when I
I'm
looked it
gonna have
up
to look into
online,
that.
because he looked it up, and then I thought that doesn't sound right. But after looking it up online, I was like, well, okay, so it's very similar
Mhm.
to the glycated albumin, except for the glycated albumin is just the albumin alone.
Yeah.
And
So the
and
reason why I said protein is because albumin is protein,
yeah, yeah.
basically. So
And so this one
anyway,
includes other proteins. Yeah, so that's going
okay.
to be interesting. So I'm waiting
Yeah.
on that one to come
Yeah,
back.
make sure you do a video and let us know about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
Okay, so I am actually I'm actually helping Russ now with the keto cookout. Excuse me. The keto cookout lives on Tuesday nights, and he has several people that he has asked to help him, and I am one of them. So
Yay.
you can see me there on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And
Fabulous.
so and I'm trying to just pump out some more videos and trying to figure things out.
Mhm.
I'm over analyzing YouTube most of the time, so you'll see I'll change things up and then I'll be like, pull back. And I have this thing lately that I've been doing where I'm like, okay, I've seen several YouTubers that I really, really liked that I feel like are getting away from doing the thumbnails where it's like, and then something on one side. Like, I always feel so silly doing these huge like it feels like more of a production than the actual video. And so I'm kind of protesting it in a way and just kind of doing a little test to see, does it change things for me, especially
Mhm.
at me being this level. And I almost think like the thumbnails could unnaturally bring in people that maybe I didn't intend to target to begin with. I don't know. It's just a theory I have, and a lot of that comes from TikTok, to be honest with you. I
Mm.
know you guys probably aren't on TikTok, but most
Mm-mm.
people in the carnivore community are not on TikTok. But let me just tell you, you can see a lot from the trends from TikTok as to what's going to happen with the other social media.
Oh,
And basically, they'll get on that TikTok any old way. It doesn't matter. Your hair could be a total mess, no makeup, don't really care. Just got to get on there and shoot that video real quick. There's no, making the big thumbnails. It is what it is. You can choose like a shot in the video, but it's not a big production, and it makes it so much more fun, and it makes it so much more natural, and it
Yeah,
yeah.
leads you to naturally gravitate to people because you're like, they look real. Look at that house.
exactly.
Look at the art on the wall. She's got an off-centered dream catcher. I can vibe with this girl, like it's just really cool. Like I've learned a lot from TikTok, and it's a really kind of a fun place to be. And I hate that I hate that the whole China thing and I
Yeah.
hate that because there's some really good people on there. But
We have seen some great things on TikTok.
I have learned from the trends on TikTok, they tend to translate later to YouTube and Facebook, and everybody's copying off of them. So I'm like, okay, are we going to see this as well? So that's why I'm trying this little, like, I just have these theories about things, and that's one of
Well,
them.
test them out for us.
I'm doing it. And I'm so young in my journey. Like I'm so early in my journey that it doesn't really matter. I mean, like it's not like I've got this huge YouTube channel that I'm just going to destroy with no, fancy thumbnails. So anyway, but have you ever watched Dry Creek Wrangler?
Mm-mm.
Oh, he is so cool. And he's got like, I don't know how many followers. He's got probably millions now. But when I found him, it was just like this old guy sitting in a rocking chair, smoking a pipe and just talking. And he had no thumbnail or anything. It was just like, here he is. And he's interesting as hell,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
People really like him for him. They don't care about a
Yeah.
thumbnail. So
Yeah.
anyway. All right, guys, we're going to get off here and we will see y'all next week. So
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, everybody.
thank you, guys.
See
Bye.
you next week.